I was working the front desk at a I was working the front desk at a hotel in Amsterdam when an American couple walked up to me, visibly exhausted. The woman looked at her phone, then at me and said, "We've been walking for 3 hours trying to find our hotel." I glanced at their reservation. They were standing in it. "Ma'am, you're here. This is your hotel." She stared at me like I'd just told her the sky was green. "No, the app says we need to go to Amsterdam." I nodded slowly. "Yes, we're in Amsterdam." Her husband jumped in. "But we're in the Netherlands." I took a breath. "Amsterdam is in the Netherlands." They looked at each other, then back at me. "So, they're the same thing." I just smiled and handed them their room keys. Another guy came through my line at a train station in Brussels. He had this massive suitcase, the kind you'd pack for a 6-month trip. I asked where he was heading. "Paris," he said. "Just for the day," I blinked. "Just for the day? With that suitcase?" He nodded. "Yeah, I heard Europe's got pickpockets, so I brought everything with me." I asked if he planned to carry it around the Louvre. He paused. "Wait, can't I just leave it at the train station?" I explained we didn't have luggage storage like that. He looked genuinely shocked. "So what do people do?" I shrugged. "They pack light." He stood there for a minute, processing. Then he asked if he could check it like at an airport. I told him no. He missed his train. My cousin worked at a cafe in London. One morning, an American tourist ordered a coffee and sat down. A few minutes later, he came back up to the counter. "Excuse me, I think you forgot my coffee." My cousin pointed to the cup on his table. "Sir, it's right there." The guy shook his head. "That's not coffee. It's like espresso-sized." My cousin explained that's how they serve regular coffee there. The man was baffled. "But where's the rest of it?" "This is like 2 sips." She offered to make him an Americano, which is bigger. He agreed, but kept muttering. In the States, coffee means coffee. When she handed him the Americano, he took a sip and frowned. "This tastes watered down." She just nodded. "Yes, sir. That's what an Americano is. Espresso with water." He left a 1-star review saying they didn't know how to make coffee. I had a roommate in Germany who hosted an American exchange student. The first night, the student asked what time dinner was. My roommate said 7. The American showed up at 7 with a plate, expecting food to be served to him. My roommate stared. "What are you doing?" The student looked confused. "It's dinner time." My roommate laughed. "Yeah, we eat at 7, but you cook your own food." The American just stood there holding his empty plate. "Wait, there's no meal plan?" My roommate explained that in their apartment, everyone made their own meals. The student looked lost. "But how do I know what to make?" My roommate suggested looking in the fridge. The kid opened it, stared for a solid minute, then closed it and ordered pizza. He did that for 3 weeks straight. I was a tour guide in Rome for a summer. One afternoon, an American family asked me how to get to the Colosseum. I pointed across the street. "It's right there." The dad squinted. "Where?" I pointed again. "There, the giant ancient amphitheater." He pulled out his phone and started typing. "Can you just give me the address so I can GPS it?" I told him he could literally see it from where we were standing. He insisted he needed the GPS, so I gave him the address. He typed it in, and his phone said 3-minute walk. He looked relieved. "Okay, thanks." Then he walked in the opposite direction. I watched him follow his phone for 10 minutes before he circled back. His wife looked at me and said, "Your roads are confusing." Another time, I was helping a couple book train tickets in Florence. They wanted to go to Venice. I showed them the schedule. The man asked, "Does the train have Wi-Fi?" I said yes. He nodded. "Good, because I need to work." Then he asked, "What about outlets?" I told him European trains usually have them. He seemed satisfied. But then he asked, "Okay, but do I need an adapter?" I said yes. European outlets are different. He looked annoyed. "Why doesn't Europe just use normal plugs?" I didn't know how to explain that his plugs weren't universal. His wife chimed in. "Can't we just use our phone chargers?" I explained they'd need an adapter for those too. She sighed. "This is so complicated." They bought the tickets, but missed the train because they spent 40 minutes looking for an adapter in the station. My friend worked at a rental car office in Ireland. An American walked in and asked for a car. Standard process. She handed him the keys and started explaining. "So you'll be driving on the left side of the road here?" He interrupted. "Wait, the left? Why?" She explained that's just how Ireland does it. He shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. The right side is correct." She said she understood it was different, but that's the law here. He genuinely asked, "Can I just drive on the right anyway? I'm more comfortable that way." She stared at him. "No, sir. You'll cause an accident." He looked frustrated. "But I'm American. Don't I have, like, diplomatic immunity or something?" She told him that's not how anything works. He took the car, but brought it back 2 hours later. "I can't do it. The roads are backwards." I was at a restaurant in Barcelona. An American couple sat down and immediately asked for the English menu. Fair enough. They ordered drinks and food. Everything seemed fine. Then the bill came. The guy looked at it and called the waiter over. "Excuse me, you charged us for water." The waiter nodded. "Yes, you ordered 2 bottles." The American looked confused. "But water's free." The waiter explained that bottled water costs money. The guy pushed back. "In America, water's always free." The waiter stayed polite. "Here, tap water is free if you ask. Bottled water is not." The guy got defensive. "Well, you should have told us that." The waiter pointed out they ordered it by name. The guy still seemed upset. His wife tried to calm him down, but he left muttering about hidden fees. They didn't tip, which, in Spain, was actually fine. A woman in Prague asked me for directions to the old town square. I told her she was standing in it. She looked around. "No, I mean the really old one." I clarified that this was it. She insisted there must be another one that's older. I explained this square was from the medieval period and was the main historical center. She pulled up her phone. But TripAdvisor shows pictures of one that looks more old-timey. I asked to see. She showed me a picture of the same square, from a different angle. I pointed at the church behind her. "That's in your photo." She zoomed in on her phone, looked up, zoomed in again, then said, "Oh." She walked away without saying thanks. I watched an American argue with a ticket inspector on a train in Switzerland. The inspector asked for his ticket. The guy showed a screenshot on his phone. The inspector said he needed the actual ticket, either printed or in the app. The American got annoyed. "This is a picture of my ticket. It's the same thing." The inspector calmly explained that screenshots don't have the QR code validation. The guy said, "But you can see my name and the train number right there." The inspector repeated that it didn't meet the requirements. The American raised his voice. "This is ridiculous. In the US, they just let me on." The inspector didn't budge. "Sir, this isn't the US." The guy had to buy a new ticket on the spot. He spent the rest of the ride complaining loudly about how backward Europe was. A Swiss passenger finally turned around and said, "Maybe just follow the rules next time." My cousin was working at a museum in Athens. An American tourist asked her, "Where's the replica of the Parthenon?" My cousin was confused. "The Parthenon is right outside." "The actual one?" The tourist clarified, "No, I know. But where's the replica?" My cousin asked why she'd want a replica when the real one was there. The tourist said, "Because the real one's all broken. I want to see what it looks like." My cousin explained that ancient ruins are the point of visiting historical sites. The tourist wasn't having it. But in the US, we have a full-size replica in Nashville. And it's way better because it's complete. My cousin just said, "Okay," and walked away. I was teaching English in South Korea. One of my American co-workers asked me, "Do they speak Chinese here?" I reminded her we were in Korea. She said, "Right. But don't they speak Chinese too?" I told her no, they speak Korean. She seemed surprised. "But isn't Korea part of China?" I explained that Korea is its own country. She looked skeptical. "Are you sure?" "Because on the map, they're really close." I pulled up a map and showed her the borders. She stared at it. Huh? I always thought it was like a state or something. She'd been living there for 4 months. Another teacher asked if Korea was the one with the pyramids. I said no, that's Egypt. She nodded. Right. So Korea's the one with the Great Wall? I told her that's China. She laughed nervously. Okay, so what's Korea known for? I said K-pop, technology, and kimchi. She said, oh, so it's modern. I said yes. She paused. Wait, do they have cars here? I looked at her. We'd literally driven to work that morning in a Hyundai, which is a Korean car company. She genuinely didn't connect it. I was at a pub in Dublin. An American guy started talking to me about how cool it was to finally be in London. I corrected him. We're in Dublin. That's in Ireland. He laughed. Same thing, man. I told him it very much wasn't. He waved me off. Ireland, England, it's all the UK, right? I explained that Ireland is a separate country. He looked confused. But you guys speak English. I said yes, but that doesn't make it England. He thought about it. So, like how Texas is separate from the US? I said no, Ireland is fully independent. He didn't believe me. He pulled out his phone to check. When he realized I was right, he just shrugged and said, well, they should make that clearer. My friend was a bartender in Paris. An American tourist asked him, how far is the Eiffel Tower from Paris? My friend said, it's in Paris. The tourist said, no, I know it's near Paris, but how far? My friend repeated that it's physically located within Paris. The tourist got frustrated. Okay, but how many miles? My friend said maybe 2 miles from where they were. The tourist seemed satisfied with that answer, even though it was still wrong. He left saying he'd take a taxi to Paris to see the tower. My friend didn't correct him again. I was working at a hostel in Amsterdam. An American asked me if we were near the Anne Frank house. I said yes, about a 10-minute walk. She asked, is that the girl who wrote about World War I? I gently corrected her. World War II? She said, oh right, the one with Hitler. I nodded. She continued, and she was German, right? I explained she was actually Jewish and hiding from the Germans. The woman looked surprised. Wait, so Germany was the bad guy? I said yes. She thought for a moment. I thought that was Japan. I told her Japan was also involved, but in a different part of the war. She said, wow, war is confusing. Then she asked if Anne Frank survived. I said no. She looked sad. That's terrible. What happened? I didn't have the energy to explain the Holocaust in a hostel lobby. A guy in Berlin asked me if the Berlin Wall was still up. I told him no, it came down in 1989. He said, oh, so recently. I pointed out that was over 30 years ago. He said, yeah, but like recently in history. Fair enough. Then he asked if you could still visit it. I said there are sections preserved as memorials. He got excited. Can you climb it? I said no. It's a historical monument. He looked disappointed. Man, that would have been cool for Instagram. Then he asked, so wait, which side was the good side? I asked what he meant. He said, like East or West? I explained that West Berlin was democratic and East was communist. He said, so the West were the good guys. I said, it's more complicated than that. He shrugged. Sounds like the West were the good guys. I met an American in Italy who asked me why Italians don't just speak English. I told him because they're in Italy. He said, yeah, but wouldn't it be easier for everyone? I asked if Americans speak Italian when Italians visit the US. He said, no. I said, well, there you go. He didn't see the connection. But English is like the main language. I explained that English is common for business and tourism, but expecting everyone to speak it is unrealistic. He said, I just think if everyone spoke one language, life would be simpler. I agreed that would be convenient. He smiled. Exactly. So they should just switch. I gave up. My cousin worked at a bookstore in Edinburgh. An American tourist asked where the Scottish history section was. My cousin showed her. The woman picked up a book about medieval Scotland. She flipped through it and said, Wait, Scotland had kings? My cousin said yes. The woman was shocked. I thought Scotland was always part of England. My cousin explained Scotland has its own distinct history and was an independent kingdom for centuries. The woman said, "But you're all British now, right?" My cousin clarified that Scotland is part of the UK but still has its own identity. The woman looked confused. So is England in charge or not? My cousin tried to explain the political structure. The woman interrupted. "This is too complicated. Do you have any books about Harry Potter instead?" My cousin directed her to the fiction section. I was at a market in Thailand. An American guy asked how much a shirt cost. The vendor said 200 baht. The guy pulled out dollars and handed over $200. The vendor looked stunned. I stepped in. "Sir, she means 200 baht, not dollars." He looked at me. "What's the difference?" I explained the currency exchange. 200 baht is about $6. His jaw dropped. "Wait, so I almost gave her $200 for a $6 shirt?" I said yes. He turned to the vendor. "Why didn't you stop me?" She didn't speak much English, but she looked just as confused as he did. He ended up buying 5 shirts and acted like he'd discovered a hidden secret of travel. He told everyone at the hostel about the hack. My friend worked at a pharmacy in London. An American came in asking for Tylenol. My friend offered paracetamol, which is the same thing. The guy said, "No, I need Tylenol." My friend explained they're identical, just different brand names. The guy didn't believe her. "But the box looks different." She showed him the ingredients. Exactly the same. He still wasn't convinced. "Can you just check the back for Tylenol?" She said they don't carry that brand in the UK. He got annoyed. "Fine, I'll just suffer then." He walked out. My friend watched him leave, holding the paracetamol he refused to buy. I was hiking in Switzerland with a group. An American asked how far the next cabin was. I said about 5 kilometers. He asked, "How much is that in miles?" I said roughly 3 miles. He nodded, but then asked, "Why don't you just use miles?" I explained that most of the world uses the metric system. He said, "But miles are easier." I asked how. He said, "Because that's what I know." I told him that's not the same as easier. He disagreed. If everyone used miles, we wouldn't have this problem. I pointed out that 95% of the world uses kilometers. He said, then they should switch. The entire group went quiet. A woman in Germany asked me why the temperature was so wrong. I asked what she meant. She said, "The weather app says it's 25 degrees, but it's hot outside." I realized she was reading Celsius. I explained that 25 Celsius is about 77 Fahrenheit. She looked relieved. "Oh, okay. Why didn't they just say that?" I told her the rest of the world uses Celsius. She said, "That's weird. Fahrenheit makes way more sense." I asked why. She said, "Because 0 is cold and 100 is hot." I pointed out that in Celsius, 0 is freezing and 100 is boiling, which is also logical. She shook her head. "No, that's confusing." I didn't argue. I was at a gas station in France. An American pulled up and started filling his tank. When he finished, he looked at the pump and panicked. He came inside. "I just put in 50 liters. How much is that in gallons?" I did the math. "About 13 gallons. He went pale. 13 gallons? My tank only holds 15. I told him that's fine. He didn't overfill. He wasn't convinced. But it felt like a lot. I assured him it was normal. He paid and left, still muttering about liters being confusing. He came back an hour later. "My car's fine, but you should really switch to gallons." My cousin was a receptionist at a doctor's office in Australia. An American called asking what time his appointment was. She said 3 p.m. He asked, "Is that 1500 hours?" She said, "No, it's 3 p.m. We don't use military time for appointments." He sounded frustrated, but I saw it written as 1500 on the form. She explained that was likely a different system. He said, "Why can't you just pick one way to tell time?" She said they do. It's just that some forms use the 24-hour clock for clarity. He hung up, annoyed. He missed his appointment because he showed up at 3 a.m. I watched an American argue with a waiter in Spain. The waiter brought the check. The guy looked at it. "You didn't add a tip line." The waiter said tipping isn't expected in Spain. The guy said, "What do you mean? How do you make money?" The waiter explained they're paid a full wage. The guy was shocked. "So I don't tip?" The waiter said he could if he wanted, but it wasn't required. The guy seemed uncomfortable. But what if the service was good? The waiter said a small tip would be appreciated but not necessary. The guy left €2 on a €40 bill and apologized for not tipping more. The waiter looked confused but thanked him anyway. I was at a train station in Belgium. An American asked me what platform his train was on. I said platform 7. He looked around. "Where's that?" I pointed to the sign that said 7. He walked up to it, then came back. "That's in a different language." I said it's just the number 7. He insisted the font looked different. I told him numbers are universal. He said, "Are you sure?" I walked him to the platform. He looked at the train. "How do I know this is the right one?" I pointed to the electronic display showing the destination. He said, "Okay, but what if it's wrong?" I told him trains run on schedule, and the displays are accurate. He got on, but kept asking other passengers if it was the right train. It was. My friend was working at a hotel in Japan. An American guest complained that the bed was too hard. My friend explained that Japanese beds are typically firmer. The guest said, "Can I get an American mattress?" My friend said they don't have those. The guest asked if they could order one. My friend said no. The guest looked upset. "How do people sleep here?" My friend said, "On the beds." The guest didn't laugh. He asked for extra blankets to make it softer. My friend brought them. The next morning, he complained the blankets made it too hot. My friend offered to take them back. He said no. He'd rather be hot than uncomfortable. He left a review saying the hotel wasn't accommodating. I was on a bus in Portugal, heading to the coast. An American couple sat behind me. The woman looked out the window and said, "Wow, they have McDonald's here." Her husband replied, "Yeah, McDonald's is everywhere." She paused. "But do they have the same menu?" He said he didn't know. She pulled out her phone and started Googling. Then she gasped. "They don't have ranch dressing." Her husband looked disturbed. "What? How do people eat salad?" She said, "I don't know, but this is a deal breaker." They spent the next 20 minutes discussing whether they should cut their trip short. I sat there wondering if they realized Portugal had other food. Another time, I was at the airport in Copenhagen. An American asked me if Denmark used the euro. I said no. They use the krone. He looked annoyed. "Why doesn't everyone just use the same money?" I said that's what the euro was supposed to do, but not all countries joined. He said, "Well, they should make it mandatory." I asked if he'd want other countries to force the US to use the euro. He said, "That's different." I asked how. He said, "Because we're America." I didn't have a response to that. My last story comes from a friend in New Zealand. An American tourist asked her, "When do you guys celebrate Thanksgiving?" My friend said, "We don't. That's an American holiday." The tourist seemed shocked. "Really? I thought everyone did Thanksgiving." My friend said no. The tourist asked, "Well, what do you do in November then?" My friend said, "Just live?" The tourist said, "That's sad." My friend assured her they were fine without it. The tourist left, saying she felt bad for countries that didn't have Thanksgiving. My friend told me she thinks about that conversation at least once a month. Look, these stories aren't meant to bash anyone. Traveling is hard. Culture shock is real. Everyone makes mistakes in foreign places, but there's something about watching someone confidently incorrect that just sticks with you. The guy who thought Amsterdam was a different country than the Netherlands. The woman who wanted a replica of the Parthenon. The person who tried to drive on the right side of the road in Ireland because it felt more correct. And trust me, these stories never stop coming. I've got a whole backlog of moments where good intentions crashed into cultural confusion, where assumptions met reality and lost. where someone's entire understanding of the world got gently corrected by a train conductor or a museum guide or just a random local trying to help. The world's a big place, and some